Star Wars has been around for decades, so it's a sad but inevitable reality that many of the actors who have appeared in that galaxy far, far away are no longer with us. Here are a few faces from the franchise you may not have realized passed away. Admiral Ackbar had a pretty small role in the original Star Wars trilogy. In fact, he only appeared briefly in Return of the Jedi. Even still, the character's appearance made him a firm fan favorite, as did the iconic line that has now passed into pop culture legend.
It's a trap!
Wow, Admiral Ackbar!
Naturally then, fans of Star Wars mourned the unfortunate passing of Ackbar's voice actor Erik Bauersfeld, who died in 2016 at the age of 93. Interestingly, Bauersfeld once argued that he thought of his movie roles as a secondary career that he had accidentally stumbled into, as opposed to his more solid work as a radio producer. He once wrote, "The voice work I did in movies was accidental. I was working with Randy Tom on radio dramas at his technical quarters at Lucasfilm. One day Ben Burt, sound designer for Star Wars, came by and asked if I would audition for a voice in the movie." Bauersfeld also voiced Bib Fortuna, one of Jabba the Hutt's associates, and he returned to the role of Admiral Ackbar in The Force Awakens, which released just months before he passed away. As he dies in the opening hour of the film, Uncle Owen can be considered a pretty minor Star Wars character in the grand scheme of things, but his death is the primary call to arms that sets Luke Skywalker off on his hero's journey. So in a weird way, Owen is actually one of the movie's most important characters, making actor Phil Brown one of the story's pivotal players. Sadly, Brown passed away in 2006 at the age of 89. Even though he was well known when Star Wars was made, he'd faced plenty of hardships as an actor. In the 1950s, Brown was caught up in Senator Joseph McCarthy's communist trials and was actually blacklisted because he refused to comply with the House Un-American Activities Committee's demand to name communists in Hollywood. He denied being a communist himself, but was still forced to move to London to continue acting. As it happened, George Lucas was filming in London at the same time and needed a local actor with an American accent, so he brought Brown on board. Not long after, Brown was with Lucas in Tunisia, filming A New Hope's early scenes on Tatooine. A powerhouse English actress, Shelagh Fraser, died in 2000 at the age of 79. She had played a small but memorable role in A New Hope as Luke's Aunt Beru. The character dies early on in the story, so Fraser was unable to contribute a lot to the film, but just like Lars, Beru's death spars Luke into action, driving his character arc through much of the trilogy. And even though her role in Star Wars is small, some would argue that she's indirectly responsible for Luke becoming the hero he is. At a New York Comic-Con panel, author Meg Cabot argued that very case, suggesting that Aunt Beru's kindness and caring for Luke helped him overcome the dark side and defeat the Empire. It also helped him find the compassion to look for the good left in Darth Vader, without whom he never would have stopped Emperor Palpatine. So yeah, nice work, Aunt Beru. Drewe Henley appeared in the Star Wars franchise as Red Leader, the pilot who led Luke's squadron in the strike against the Death Star at the climax of A New Hope. Sadly, he was accidentally credited as Drewe Henley at the end of the film, but hey, he at least managed to squeeze in a post-mortem appearance in Rogue One thanks to the power of archive footage. In the first film, Red Leader actually nearly destroys the Death Star. He launches his torpedoes at the exhaust port, but his aim is slightly off. Not long after his miss, his ship is destroyed and the poor guy is subsequently killed. Henley was a well-respected actor when he was cast in A New Hope, but was forced to retire not long after the film was released due to his struggles with bipolar disorder. After working through his mental illness, he settled down to run a bed and breakfast with his wife. Henley died in 2016 at the age of 75. Anakin Skywalker has been played by multiple actors across the Star Wars franchise, but when his deformed, weary face is revealed in Star Wars Return of the Jedi, that's classically trained actor Sebastian Shaw playing the role. He also portrayed Anakin's Force Ghost at the end of the original version of Return of the Jedi, before being replaced by Hayden Christensen in subsequent releases. Shaw was mostly known as a stage actor outside of Star Wars fandom. He was a member of the Royal Shakespeare Company, where he'd often play lead or featured roles. He was also a Broadway veteran and was well known for taking on parts in daring and controversial plays. Lucas choosing to digitally replace Shaw with Christensen in Return of the Jedi sparked some controversy at the time, but Star Wars fans will still never forget the reveal of Darth Vader's face. Shaw passed away in 1994 at the age of 89. Jason Wingreen didn't actually appear in the Star Wars films in person, but his voice brought one of the saga's most iconic villains to life. Wingreen was the original voice of Boba Fett, the intergalactic bounty hunter who tracks down Han Solo during The Empire Strikes Back. Wingreen was also a well-known television actor when he auditioned for Star Wars, having appeared in a number of different shows throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He originally auditioned for the role of Yoda, but lost out on the role and was cast as Boba Fett instead, and only recorded 4 lines for the final film. He's not even credited, and it wasn't until the year 2000 that the public discovered who had voiced the villain. Still, it's a testament to Wingreen's talent that Boba Fett became such a massively popular character nonetheless. Wingreen passed away in 2016 at the age of 95. You may never have seen Kenny Baker's face or heard his voice in a Star Wars film, but it's a fair bet you still know who he is. For most of the movies in the franchise, he portrayed one of sci-fi's most iconic characters, R2-D2. R2-D2 wasn't a puppet or an animatronic like so many other creatures in the Star Wars universe. Instead, there was an actor inside that droid. Baker was only 3 foot 8 inches, so he could fit inside the chassis used for filming, and he's the one responsible for crafting much of R2-D2's personality. When Baker passed away in 2016 at the age of 81, StarWars.com wrote, "Whether it was the slow turn of R2's dome to convey suspicion or nervous wobbles signifying fear, Baker made a robotic being seem very human." While Baker played the droid in all 3 original films and 2 prequels, he also played an Ewok in Return of the Jedi. Peter Cushing was a massive star when he was cast as Grand Moff Tarkin in A New Hope. He also brought an immediate gravitas to the film, oozing menace and calm and somehow coming off every bit as intimidating as Darth Vader himself.
Charming to the last.
Before appearing in A New Hope, Cushing was an icon in horror cinema. He appeared in many of the Dracula and Frankenstein films of the 50s and 60s, and also portrayed Sherlock Holmes in a few movie adaptations. After a long and illustrious career, Cushing passed away in 1994 at the age of 81. Despite this, however, he technically reprised his role as Tarkin in Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, even though the film came out over 20 years after his death. Cushing was recreated in the film with state-of-the-art CGI, nearly climbing out of the uncanny valley in the process. Nearly. Even though Obi-Wan Kenobi died in A New Hope, Alec Guinness appeared in the other films of the original trilogy, thanks to the power of the Force. His casting lent some credibility to the original film, but he also infamously viewed the story as, in his words, fairy tale rubbish. Guinness was a hugely famous actor when he signed on for George Lucas's space opera. He'd won an Oscar for The Bridge on the River Kwai and had starred in classics such as Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago. And while many of the leading actors in Star Wars are big names now, they weren't at the time, making Guinness by far the biggest star in the movie in 1977. But why did he join the project if he hated the material? Well, there are a couple of reasons. First, he thought the moral of the story was admirable enough. Second, he wouldn't have to do any publicity for the film. And third, the studio offered him a massive salary. Of course, he ignored any fan mail he received about Star Wars and hated discussing his role as Obi-Wan. Sir Alec Guinness passed away in the year 2000 at the age of 86. One of the most prolific actors in the Star Wars franchise, Christopher Lee's career spans over 250 roles over the length of his career. Lee is absolutely one of the gods of geekdom and has graced several of Hollywood's most notable franchises. Here, he portrayed Count Dooku in 2 of the prequel films, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. Lee became a star due to his many appearances in the Hammer horror Dracula franchise, where, funnily enough, he frequently collaborated with another Star Wars alum, Peter Cushing. Lee's imposing figure and commanding voice made him perfectly suited to play the villain, which helped him a great deal in arguably his biggest ever film role, playing Saruman in The Lord of the Rings. A man of many talents, Christopher Lee also released a number of heavy metal albums when he was in his 80s and 90s. He was also knighted, served in the Second World War as a member of the RAF, and was attached to the British Army's Long-Range Desert Group, the precursor of the modern-day SAS. He passed away in 2015 at the age of 93. Despite never having shown his face on screen in Star Wars, Peter Mayhew quickly became one of the saga's most iconic characters. His performance as Chewbacca helped bring a sense of real humanity to a character where many other actors could have easily been lost beneath a mask.
Laugh it up, fuzzball.
Mayhew was a hospital orderly when he auditioned for Chewbacca, and even kept that job until after Return of the Jedi was released. The 7'3" actor then essentially made his living off the role for the rest of his life, attending conventions as a fan-favorite star for decades. He eventually reprised the role in 2015's The Force Awakens. Nearly everyone who worked with Mayhew on the Star Wars franchise had nothing but kind things to say about him. After his death in April 2019, Mark Hamill wrote on Twitter, "He was the gentlest of giants. A big man with an even bigger heart who never failed to make me smile, and a loyal friend who I loved dearly. I'm grateful for the memories we shared, and I'm a better man for just having known him." Peter Diamond was more of a stuntman and coordinator than an actor, with almost 250 roles in the stunts category on his IMDb page. However, he had a variety of small roles in the original Star Wars trilogy, and he had a large impact on several memorable scenes. Some of the Star Wars roles Diamond took on include a Koba, the Tusken Raider who attacks Luke Skywalker, and Garuf Lefoe, the guy who rats out Luke and Obi-Wan to the stormtroopers at the Mos Eisley Cantina. He also appeared as various helmeted or background characters in the trilogy, often when those roles called for dangerous stunts. His other contributions to the original trilogy came from his role as the stunt coordinator. He actually created 2 different styles of lightsaber combat used by the films Sith and Jedi. Diamond passed away in March 2004 at the age of 74. According to the credits of The Empire Strikes Back, John Hollis played Lando's aide, as he's not actually given a name in the film. However, many Star Wars fans know him as Lobot, the cyborg who helps Lando Calrissian fight back against the stormtroopers so the heroes can escape Cloud City. According to some deeper Star Wars lore, Lobot originally used his cybernetic enhancements to augment his intelligence. However, during a mission gone wrong with Lando, Lobot was injured and lost the aspects of his mind that made him human. So now he's essentially a computer operating a human body. His unique cybernetics allow him to have a direct connection with Cloud City's computer system. Hollis appeared in several other popular films, including most of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, Flash Gordon, and For Your Eyes Only. After a 40-year acting career, Hollis passed away in 2005 at 77 years old. In A New Hope, Jack Porkins was a part of Luke's Red Squadron during the assault on the Death Star. He flew as Red 6, and unfortunately, he couldn't contribute much to the battle. His ship malfunctioned early in the fight, and unable to maneuver, he was quickly shot down by Imperial forces. Besides his role as Porkins in A New Hope, William Hootkins also had roles in movies like Flash Gordon, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Superman 4. Outside of Star Wars, his most well-known role probably came in 1989's Batman, where he played corrupt Gotham Police Lieutenant Max Eckhart. He was also a prolific voice actor, as he frequently lent his voice to radio plays and audiobooks. Hootkins died from pancreatic cancer in 2005. He was 57 years old. Alex McCrindle played a very small role in A New Hope, but he was actually the first actor to speak one of Star Wars' most famous quotes. McCrindle played General Dodonna, who tells the rebels their plan of attack when the Death Star is approaching. After explaining that the Death Star's only weak point is a tiny exhaust port, some of the rebel pilots express concern. Luke Skywalker speaks up that the target isn't impossible, which prompts this line from Dodonna.
"Then man your ships, and may the Force be with you."
The quote is often mistakenly attributed to Obi-Wan Kenobi, who never actually says that line in A New Hope. Alex McCrindle was known more for television than film, and A New Hope is one of the only big-name films to his credit. He died in 1990 at the age of 78. Jack Purvis was one of Hollywood's most well-known little-person actors, so it's no surprise that George Lucas cast him in more significant alien roles across his original trilogy. Purvis actually played 3 different characters in the 3 original Star Wars films. He appeared as the head Jawa in A New Hope, the Chief Ugnaught in The Empire Strikes Back, and Teebo the Ewok in Return of the Jedi. He was no stranger to the entertainment scene, as Purvis had been in a touring musical group with fellow Star Wars actor Kenny Baker. The duo traveled to many bars and clubs with their musical comedy show. Purvis also appeared in several other memorable films, mostly in the 1980s, such as Time Bandits, Willow, Brazil, and Labyrinth. Purvis died at the age of 60 in 1997. Larry Ward might not be the most famous Star Wars actor with only 2 movies to his credit, A New Hope and Return of the Jedi, but he loaned his voice to 2 of Star Wars' most memorable baddies. In the original film, he played the voice of the notorious bounty hunter Greedo.
Jabba wa ninki ko pamushani kaitani wa nyaruska.
And in Return of the Jedi, he provided the dialogue for everybody's favorite space gangster, Jabba the Hutt. Even more important than giving the giant slug his voice was helping to develop the entire language he spoke. The foundation for Huttese was laid down by sound designer Ben Burt. He based the language on Quechua, the language of a group of indigenous Peruvians. Burt played Quechua recordings for Ward, then told the actor to improvise dialogue that sounded like it. Ward passed away in 2007 at the age of 63. Andrew Jack contributed to the Star Wars franchise in multiple ways. Fans might recognize him as Kaluan Emmett, a major in the Resistance forces in The Force Awakens and a general in The Last Jedi. He was also the voice of Moloch in Solo: A Star Wars Story. However, Jack's real contribution to Star Wars came as a dialect coach. Jack helped many of the actors in the later Star Wars films perfect their accents. As TMZ noted, it's very likely that Jack taught John Boyega how to hide his British accent for the part of Finn. He also helped the actors learn to speak fictional languages. As original Solo director Christopher Miller explained, "We asked him to teach Alden Ehrenreich to speak Shriwook. I'll always remember listening to them gargle roar at each other back and forth."
Yeah, I speak a little now. Just listen to me, you.
Outside of the Star Wars franchise, Jack worked on accents in some of the biggest films ever made, including the Avengers franchise and the Lord of the Rings series. In March 2020, Andrew Jack passed away from complications due to COVID-19. Richard LeParmentier played Admiral Motti, the man who dared mock Vader's force practices during a meeting between several Imperial officers in A New Hope. Confident that the Death Star will wipe the rebels from the history books, Motti dismisses Vader when the Sith Lord compares the Death Star's power unfavorably to that of the Force.
Your sad devotion to that ancient religion has not helped you conjure up the stolen data tapes.
That's what causes Vader to demonstrate the Force choke technique. Motti later directs the Death Star toward Alderaan and leads Imperial operatives in blowing it up. LeParmentier relished the role, once proudly describing Motti as the only Imperial officer who ever stood up to Darth Vader. The actor even started up a now-defunct Motti fan site and reprised the character in a 2012 Xbox commercial that recreates his most famous scene. Had the 66-year-old not passed away in 2013, he and other Star Wars actors would have played their roles once again in Motti Now, a fan project by LeParmentier that went through various permutations, including a comic book. Things might have gone better for the Empire if General Tagg had been involved in overseeing the Death Star rather than Darth Vader and Grand Moff Tarkin. Played by Don Henderson, Tagg is in the scene where Vader chokes Motti, cautioning his fellow Imperial officers to take the rebels' theft of the Death Star schematics seriously. Tagg also expresses dismay when Tarkin announces the Imperial Senate's dissolution, but neither Motti nor Tarkin pay much heed to the heaping helping of common sense Tagg flings at them. While Star Wars gained Henderson recognition outside of the UK, Henderson himself admitted to Star Wars, the official magazine, that his involvement had slipped his mind until he saw it with his son in the movie theater. That didn't stop him from having a healthy acting career that lasted nearly 3 decades, particularly gaining acclaim and attention in the UK for portraying quirky law enforcement officer George Bullman in The XYY Man. His career also involved a notable role in Doctor Who. Henderson died on June 22, 1997, just a few months after his character returned to theaters in the special edition version of A New Hope. Though not a major character, you'll likely remember Eddie Byrne's Commander Willard, the first fellow member of the rebellion whom Leia interacts with on Yavin 4 when she finally arrives. Though a small part, Willard actually does do something fairly important in the film, namely having the Death Star plans extracted from R2-D2 so the rebels can figure out how to attack the moon-shaped station. Byrne was no stranger to 2 of the higher-profile actors in A New Hope. In 1966's Island of Terror, Byrne, portraying Dr. Reginald Landers, seeks out help from pathologist Brian Stanley, played by Grand Moff Tarkin actor Peter Cushing. And in the 1959 movie The Scapegoat, Byrne plays a friendly bartender who helps Sir Alec Guinness's character become better acquainted with his physical double, also played by Guinness. Sadly, the chances of the 3 actors appearing in another film together ended when Eddie Byrne passed away on August 21, 1981. Given how many characters in Star Wars wear armor or are aliens, there are plenty of actors from the saga whose faces you never see. Such is the case with Des Webb, who is the Wampa that Luke and his Tauntaun run into while making the rounds on Hoth. While Webb himself isn't visible to viewers as he's inside a big hairy costume, fans of the unaltered original trilogy may recall that the Wampa doesn't appear on screen quite as much before 1997. Blame Webb's costume, which was just too cumbersome for the actor to pull off all the Wampa's feats. The special edition version of Empire added more Wampa footage, with Howie Weed stepping into a new costume. Webb's acting roles were few and low-key. Interestingly, however, the final film he's credited in, Morons from Outer Space, has an intro that emulates a scene in A New Hope where Darth Vader's Star Destroyer first appears. Webb died on May 21, 2002, 5 days after Attack of the Clones made its US debut. The man in the battered Mandalorian armor in both Empire and Return of the Jedi is Jeremy Bulloch. As Bulloch explained to Sci-Fi Central, he was actually juggling his days shooting as Boba Fett with his evening job as a theater actor. The packed schedule didn't affect his enthusiasm for the role, though he admitted to StarWars.com that the costume wasn't exactly the coziest. Bulloch, being the original Boba Fett, is well known to the Star Wars faithful, but perhaps not as common knowledge is the fact that Bulloch appears unmasked in Revenge of the Sith as Captain Colton, who takes several of the heroes to Coruscant to figure out why clone troopers are killing Jedi. He's also Empire lackey Lieutenant Shekel, who seizes Leia when she warns Luke that Vader has been expecting the young Jedi. Bulloch appeared in several features and in fan films afterward in roles that paid homage to his iconic character. He passed away from Parkinson's complications on December 17, 2020. Irish actor Ray Stevenson first ventured into a galaxy far, far away in Star Wars Rebels as the voice of Mandalorian Gar Saxon, leader of the Mandalorian Super Commandos. He later reprised the role in the Clone Wars animated series. Marvel fans might recognize him as Frank Castle in Punisher Warzone or the MCU's Volstagg. His roles also extended into other popular series on both the big and small screens, like Dexter, the Divergent series, and Vikings. Stevenson's reinsertion into the Star Wars franchise came posthumously. He passed away on May 21, 2023, only 3 months before the debut of Ahsoka, where he portrays the mysterious Baylan Skoll. While Stevenson is not alive to see fans' reaction to Ahsoka, he's expressed great joy in taking part, telling Screen Rant Plus he considers the series sprinkled with pixie dust.